Hi, I'm Yasuhisa. I'm a freelance designer, and you're listening to Gut Talks, double GU double T.
Hi, I'm Maria. Thank you for listening, and make sure you subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And don't forget to watch the full episode. Thanks again for listening to Gut Talks.
My theory is Japanese as a language is a super high context language. We don't require to have a subject to communicate, basically. So we have very, very high context conversations, and that leads to a lot of business talk or even design talk tends to be feeling, basically. So you can feel each other, read the context without saying anything. So, but they can communicate well. And that's kind of, in a way, it is very, very beautiful. But in a business context, that's kind of not a great idea. It's hard to scale in that way. And that leads to that's something very, very resonates strongly in the design community. It is about feeling, even though it is solving problem, but design is about feeling very, very artistic. So it has a lot of high context within those designs. And as a result, I think we don't have, I think a lot of designers are not really great at explaining design. They can describe design. This is why I thought it is a good idea to use blue, for example. But what's the business impact? Why you did this way? And what's the landscape of the industries you're trying to solve? You're not really good at talking about that. So I think one of the major things that I found, big or small, it doesn't really matter. So designers are not really great at articulating your ideas and negotiating the pitch and the design to non-designers, because they used to do everything based on feeling, basically. Even though in context of UX design, we say about design must be solving people's problem or answering users' needs or things like that. But you don't. There are not many people are documenting design and articulating or critiquing design based on those documents or things like that. I think that's something that I have been trying to do within the company. So they haven't write anything before. Mm-hmm. So I train them to write document first or do some critique sessions based on that document or things like that. So yeah, it's been pretty, I think in some countries that's a kind of basic skill in design, but I think that's something that's lacking. Okay. But that's something that I've been working on in most of the companies, basically. Yeah.
Okay. And the reason why I put the goal now, because you touched on during this section here, you spoke about emotions, feelings, gut feelings in a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. So what you're trying to say is, are you trying to push back a little bit on gut feelings or emotions?
I think it comes to the balance in someday, but I think from my perspective, I think we're pushing a little too much towards the feeling, and that's really hard to scale, because especially in the companies in Europe and in the United States and even China too. Right now, the organization trying to scale design. And that rapid scale and growth, if you want to compete with those companies or putting some value as a designers, you have to be in a member of scalable organizations. But if you're just saying everything, the gut feeling, or something unexplainable stuff, you can't be in an organization where you can't really even compete in design industry, I guess. Like language barriers probably going to collapse within 10 or 20 years. So you have to compete everyone in the world, basically. And if that happens, if you're just talking about just gut feeling and you can articulate your design, that's probably not a good employee to hire. And that's not really good place to be, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, gut feeling is, as designers, we tend to have this initial feeling or testing our assumptions as well in a certain way. But then we need to validate them, right? We can't just count on that and then say that's the way it is. There's a lot of, if you just follow your assumptions, then you might lack empathy too, which is one of the key elements. So do you think there is something here that's making me think, because we know design, for me, from whenever I was doing design, that was lacking the why in a certain way. Okay. Until I was like, okay, there is more to this. But in any case, there is an underlying, or at least there should be an underlying why in whatever you do in design, but it's always about the journey and the process. What's your take on that? Because you alluded to it indirectly, that it's not just doing this or using this tool and saying, it's just like your metaphor of the bike, right? Riding a bike. It's about the journey to get there and to achieve something. What's your take on it?
I completely agree with that perspective. It's just everything about the journey and asking why in every step possible. I think the way I work right now is continuation of asking why we are who we are, basically, as a designer. As I keep asking those questions, it is not just about the lack of skill in designers, basically. I think that designers in Japan are highly, highly skilled people, and they're probably marketable in the world, and probably one of the top-notch people. Even they said it, he or she is average. But right now, I think they're not asking why enough, and they're not articulating their design enough, so that they can't really present themselves as a great designer, even though they're great. So, my work is why they can't do that, even though they're super skilled people, and that probably leads to culture, that leads to organization, that leads to maybe sectionalism within the companies, or maybe politics, a lot of things. It's kind of I'm trying to design or trying to figure out what is the system of the decision making, basically, within the organization. I think it's not linear. It's a lot of things are interconnected to each other's, and so the reason why I'm staying with the company is multiple years is I'm trying to find the elements of those systems so that I can find the weakest link between designers and maybe stakeholders, between skill set and education, maybe.